This is WCM's Park Update, a weekly show covering the outdoor hospitality industry, hosted by Ben Quiggle and Mike Gast. During each episode, you'll hear from special guests and campground experts on topics that will help your park flourish. WCM's Park Update is a production of Woodall's Campground Magazine.
Hi, I'm Ben Quiggle, editor of Woodall's Campground Magazine, and this is another edition of WCM's Park Update, which is sponsored by Spot tonight. And my esteemed colleague Mike Gast is here, president of the Emiola Group, which does marketing, consulting, all different types of things. And our guest today is Emily Simmons, the new, I guess you're newer, president, CEO of the Campground Owners of New York. So how long have you been in that position, Emily? It's been about 6 months, right? 6 to 8 months, or
I'm actually about 2 weeks shy of 1 year.
Wow.
Yes.
Yeah.
Time flies.
Well, time flies when you're having fun, right? So, I met you a little bit at the Northeast Campground Association's conference about a month ago, near Boston, and I think that was the first time we had met each other. You just kind of tell viewers a little bit about your background, and I know you took over for Don Bennett, who is pretty well known in the industry. Yes. I guess just explain how you got to this point, I guess.
Absolutely. And yes, those were pretty big shoes to fill and continue to be. Don's really amazing in the industry. So for me, my background, I'm from a little place you might have heard of called Cape Cod, Massachusetts. So honestly, tourism and hospitality is literally in my blood. My parents owned restaurant. They owned a bed and breakfast. We had cottages out back, event venues. I was in catering and weddings. You name hospitality, I've been a part of it. So my professional career really was in weddings, event planning, catering for over 15 years. And once I had my children and realized that really was not conducive to having small children at home, that was a 365-day-a-year job, it felt like most times. I went into economic development in New York State. So I was the director of programs and strategic partnerships for the New York State Economic Development Council. And that was really my first window into communities and municipalities and how everybody worked together for economic development. Actually, a mentor of mine said tourism is the first step of economic development. I did a very small part of my career in cemetery management. I did a couple of years at our local diocesan cemeteries and managed over 900 acres of cemeteries, all the logistics and operations and staff and everything. You don't think death care is hospitality, but it is. You
don't hear about that career path much.
No, you don't. It's a very odd path that I've taken, but in the height of COVID, much like so many folks, my husband and I looked at each other and said, "Oh boy, now what do we do with these two small kids that are going stir crazy?" And a group of friends got together and we all bought travel trailers, and we took our 29-foot Jayco around, for the most part, kind of the Adirondacks here in New York, and realized what an amazing outlet that became and our ability to connect as a family. So fast forward a few years and the position for CONY became available, and take all the strange parts of my career path, and it just checked the boxes. And now here we are. So that's how I made it to CONY.
Oh. You got a great collection of campgrounds up there. Some of my favorite KOAs are up there: Watkins Glen and Herkimer and Newburgh. So they have some pristine locations up there.
It really is. We're very fortunate just with the different landscapes. You can go from close to the city to Niagara Falls to the mountains. It's amazing here.
Yeah. I guess explain a little bit about how, you used to work for the state government, correct? Or in a state agency, I guess? Yeah,
state association. I was also part of the Hudson River Valley Greenway, which was another kind of byways, scenic byways element within New York as well.
Yeah, and I guess explain how the past experiences have kind of helped you, I guess, get adjusted to kind of the advocacy part of what you do in CONY, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a big arm of our organization, is supporting our independent business owners here in New York when it comes to legislation. So my time in economic development I was there for almost 5 years, and I learned so much about the inner workings. We call it here in New York the second floor, and that's where the governor is. That's where a lot of the decision makers are, able to cultivate a lot of relationships and networking with local legislators, would have meetings with senators and assembly members and things. So that time there really prepared me for the fast pace. We just wrapped up, they just actually enacted the 2024 fiscal year budget, and I understood that process with economic development, hearings and advocacy, and how you set up your meetings, and how you need to try to grab somebody at the Capitol for a quick 5 minutes just to say hello and prove your point. So it's really positioned me to be comfortable in going into these decision makers' offices and advocating for our members.
We've heard a lot over the years about the Northeast and New York in particular being a hard place to do expansions and get approvals, and that the wheels run slow up there. Is that part of your tasks, or trying to grease those wheels and for the campground owners?
It absolutely is. And it can be challenging. New York is wonderful because it really is a foundation for forward thinking, which is great. It's great to be on the front lines of changes that are really beneficial to residents and to communities. But sometimes for businesses, that can be a challenge. So yes, my experience in economic development did allow me to kind of see how to position, how do you have to speak? How do you have to address people? How do you share the importance of what your issues and initiatives are? New York can be a challenge, and our members really rely on me and my support staff to be able to say, hey, we're here to represent our business owners. What is the economic driving factor, and how do we position that to benefit all of New York?
Yeah, definitely. What are some of the challenges maybe the people, park owners in New York are facing? I guess, what are some of the bigger issues that they kind of really press on you, I guess?
So infrastructure, we have a lot of rural campgrounds, and the ability of getting broadband, of getting, power, of getting things in general. So infrastructure can be a challenge. There is, some land still available, believe it or not. There's some beautiful land still available in a lot of parts of New York, but getting the necessary infrastructure to build the parks that people are looking to come to is certainly a challenge. The other part, touching a little bit back on doing business in New York, is some of the overhead. It's wonderful to have a lot of these options available to our employees, living wage and benefits and things, but it really creates a hardship for some of our smaller business owners. So trying to advocate for their ability to balance, providing a living wage and a great job and a career path for people, but also maintaining some costs to operate a business.
Yeah, definitely. What's the employment situation like in New York? Are these parks being able to find a lot of people to hire?
Yes and no. They are, and so many of our parks have returning staff, or they find ways to retain staff if they're open all year long. But pretty much like I feel the rest of the country, the region, whatever it might be, the employment challenges are hard when the college students go back to school, or they leave early, or sports are starting earlier now. So even if you can find staff when you're opening your park, let's say in mid-May, they're headed off and back into the sports programs now by sometimes the early part of August. So it's not so much finding staff sometimes as it is retaining them for the period of the season that you need them. So people are getting creative. Something that we're talking about, working with our members on is that camp host program. And I think, Ben, you've written about that before, and finding out if that's a good fit for some of our park owners and operators.
What's the mood of your membership in regards to expansions? Do they have the land available? Is it slowed down because of the economy? Are they moving forward?
Yes, it's a little bit of all three of those things, to be perfectly honest with you. I think people are looking to expand. They're getting creative with their expansion. Some parks are looking to add more of a glamping element with different types of accommodations. But it goes back to that infrastructure issue. The expansion is really dependent on whether the infrastructure can support the expansion. And then, there is property taxes are high in New York. So developing that land sometimes can be problematic, and making sure that you have the right investment. We have great vendors, suppliers that can provide some funding opportunities. I will say New York State does have some really wonderful grant programs that our parks can apply for. So it's just a matter of talking to each owner. What is their goal? What are they looking to achieve? And then how can we connect them with the right people to support that?
Yeah, definitely. I guess, what about on the development of the new parks? I guess, does your office get a ton of calls from people who are interested in building parks in New York?
Not as much building as acquiring and perhaps sometimes updating or expanding new. We do have a couple of prospective members right now that are with us that are starting to build. And I just keep going back to that infrastructure issue. We're working to connect them with the power companies, with the local municipalities. What structures do they have to build? What codes do they have to follow? So for the most part, we get more calls about acquiring or purchasing existing parks than building new.
So is this a lot of outside money? Is it people that aren't familiar with the campground industry that are bringing in the revenues?
In some cases, yes. Yep. Yeah, we're seeing a good amount of corporate investors that are able to really invest in these parks. In some cases, they're keeping the existing owner as staff or counsel, for lack of a better word, within the transition. I spoke with somebody yesterday who is selling their park, and the new investor is keeping 100% of the staff. So that's really great when that revenue can come in. Our park owners can go on to the next chapter, whatever that might look like for them, but that's remaining a stable business within the community supporting jobs, which is always great.
Do you find that that this new blood in the industry needs you more, or do they think that they can go off and do without you?
It's a little bit of both. I think they need us, and it's back to Ben's question about advocacy. Do they necessarily need our marketing, efforts? Not always, but sometimes, because we just have such a unique niche when we know our campers. But for the most part, they really need the advocacy piece. They need to understand how to do business in New York, and we're the best avenue to help them do that.
Yeah. Well, we'll take a break here real quick. We got to recognize our sponsor Spot Tonight, and then we will be back with Emily.
Supercharge your campground bookings with Spot Tonight, the #1 commission-free OTA for RV parks and campgrounds. Through integrations with top property management systems, Spot Tonight displays real-time outdoor accommodation inventory with a marketplace where campers can search for and instantly book campsites. Best of all, it's 100% free for operators. Visit partners.spottonight.com to get listed and unlock access to over 60 million campers.
Hi, welcome back to WCM's Park Update, and we are talking with Emily Simmons, the president and CEO of the Campground Owners of New York. And I love the abbreviation CONY. That's so easy to remember. So it's kind of like the Texas Association with Taco. I don't know if they did the abbreviation first and then the name or what, but it fits perfectly.
It does. So. That's a fun one.
It's a fun. So we had a lot of discussions here in the industry recently about national advocacy efforts. And I know CONY isn't a member of OHI as like a state partnering group, which they're eliminating in 2025 anyways. But I was just wondering, do you ever get comments from like campground owners on the national advocacy efforts? How do you as an association on your own, I guess, stay in touch with what's going on at the national level? Thanks.
Sure. To be honest, our members haven't at this point, and maybe as my tenure, continues, that will happen. Yeah. But nope, it's really been so focused on state. It doesn't mean that from our perspective, we're a small staff. I work, her name is Ann Flack. She's an amazing marketing and communications coordinator. So it's just the two of us within CONY. We stay very up to date. Honestly, Ben, we read a lot of your work. We follow a lot of the industry publications. Conversations are starting a little bit more with the RV industry from the supplier and the manufacturer side. So I stay aware. I do a lot of reading, do a lot on LinkedIn, but our members, I think, just rely on us for the most part to convey those messages. If anything comes up, anything big on the national level, we share that. And really, how does it relate back to how they do their business here in New York?
I mean, it's interesting. I know the more I talk with state associations, I always just like to learn more about how they kind of work together. And you guys do work together with other state associations. I know you guys are members of NCA, I believe,
Yes.
and you do kind of have like a group of other state association leaders that you can kind of bounce ideas off of and stuff, right?
Absolutely. That's been integral in
Yeah.
this transition for me, especially I don't own a campground. I come from hospitality, as we chatted about earlier, but I don't have the firsthand knowledge of owning a campground. So the network of people in this industry, I think, is unparalleled. Everybody is so willing to be helpful. My first couple of weeks, people were reaching out, other state directors. So we just as an organization rejoined NCA this year. So that's been instrumental, in kind of getting us out into the Northeast part, which is great. And then we're also part of camp. So that really takes the national I guess that's the national level of things. The state directors, I work very closely with New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Massachusetts, and we all just share best practices, bounce ideas off, hey, how did you manage this? What are you doing for advertising, marketing, and keeping our suppliers in mind? Our organization relies on our vendors and our suppliers and working with them and when are we running our conferences? Let's try not to conflict so that our suppliers can have more exposure, that kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely.
Let's talk about glamping for just a second. You mentioned that there's a lot of campground owners in New York that are looking to add glamping type facilities. And across the country, we've got this one side of the equation, which is people that view themselves as a glamping facility and are peer to that. And then we've got campgrounds, traditional campgrounds that are adding glamping facilities into that. Right. We've got a infrastructure and organizational infrastructure that's coming up on the glamping side. Do you see a lot of gray area in there? Do you see some? Do you plan on marketing yourself or marketing CONY to the people that say I'm a glamping resort?
We do, that, and that has to align with our mission. That's working with our board of directors to make sure that aligns. It's interesting because to some campground owners, glamping is a 4-letter word. Because it's not what is seen as traditional. It's not the tent, it's not the RV or even the cabin. But especially, within New York, you see that New York City, Boston contingency of people that they don't own a truck. They're not able to tow a trailer, but they want to get up, they want to experience other parts of New York. So it is a matter of balancing the needs. And I think that's what's so unique, and that's what's drawn me to membership associations in my career, is that there's no one avenue that fits everybody. And it's really just a matter of listening to your campground owners, finding out what their needs are, and how do you support them. For me, that is an opportunity within our organization, is to grow that quote unquote glamping element a little more and to provide more services and suppliers and products that can help grow that. It's a huge niche here. And I think it would be a disservice to consumers to not be able to provide some of that marketing.
I think one of the interesting things we talk about, and I was at a symposium here recently, when we talk about glamping, is the aspect that a lot of municipalities just don't know. There's no real definition of what glamping is, and there's such a variety of structures. I don't know, Emily, if you were out at the glamping show Americas last year, did you get to go out there?
I did not. No, I followed your work on it, but I wasn't at the show myself.
Yeah, I mean, there's such a huge range of accommodations that sometimes for municipality officials, it's hard to wrap their head around. They don't know what they're dealing with.
Right.
Is that something where you would be able to help park owners with that? Is that something that on the advocacy side, you guys have to look at and try to figure out ways to work with municipalities and help them understand what these units are, I guess?
We absolutely do. And I think there's an education piece there. That's an opportunity for us to educate the municipalities and the inspectors that are coming in. And really, they're looking at the broad infrastructure that says, how many people are going to be here? Is there a bathhouse? Where is parking? What are you zoned for? What are you permitted for? So I haven't heard as much that it's the structure itself, but rather, the occupancy and how does that work. But I think for us to get out there and to be a resource, even to the municipalities, on what does the business landscape look like? And also, how is it improving your community? These people are coming in, they're providing economic impact to the restaurants and the other tourism sites. And there's a lot of benefit there. But so far, I have not seen anybody say, well, you want a yurt versus a cabin. What does that do? It's more on the occupancy side.
What's been interesting on the WCM side is, usually when we see RV park developments, the local population will complain because they don't want all the RVs. They don't want the big RVs going down the roads.
Right.
But then a glamping development comes along, and they still, you kind of eliminate the RVs in that scenario. But then they kind of switch to permanent, like structure kind of stuff, like, oh, well, are those tents permanent or not?
Right.
And that kind of stuff. So it's always kind of interesting to see how they find negatives for both types of developments. So
people look for negatives, don't they?
Yeah. So it's just interesting. I'm like, well, I would rather not have RVs go by, I guess, but I don't know. So I guess when you're looking at the future for CONY, so what are some of the things that you guys are working on for 2024 or 2025 that members are going to see, I guess?
Absolutely. Building our supplier vendor list. There's so many wonderful businesses, startup businesses. People are finding different areas to support our park owners and operators. So growing our supplier vendor list, connecting those dots, building those relationships for people to help them run their businesses. The promotion piece, we have coming on to this, we had such a great foundation. So CONY is our association, but we have this Camp New York brand. And Ann and I are looking for that to be kind of our lifestyle brand and get out there and partner. We do some local campaigns. We do some regional campaigns with other states just to get people to come up to this area. So we're looking to really enhance that Camp New York brand. We work very, very well on the state level. A lot of people are familiar with I Love New York. But we're working with them to kind of create, yes, we love New York, but we want to Camp New York too. So that's a big piece of it. And then really our programs and our education, and just there's a lot of transition. You've seen it. We're hearing about it with the new acquisitions, new park owners, people that are coming in. So really making sure that we provide the education and perhaps even mentorship between park owners that have been doing this for many years, multi-generational park owners, and pairing them up with new park owners and operators and how to effectively run their parks in New York.
Yeah. So are you doing any consumer type research out of the residents of New York and what they're looking for out of campgrounds?
So we aren't yet. That is we'd love to do an economic impact study, again, working with Empire State Development within New York to get some of those statistics, but we'd like to hone in on it a little bit more. And that is part of our strategic plan moving forward.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's amazing just the amount of data that's out there now. And I know, Emily, you're newer to the industry to some degree, but it's just amazing. Mike can even tell you, like, just in the last 10 years, really spearheaded by Campgrounds of America. I mean, there's reports coming out all the time now. And that data is just so valuable, and finding partners to use that data, to work with and get that data is so great. So there's a variety of people to work with. So,
for our advocacy, we just did our CONY Advocacy Day ahead of the New York State budget. And we were really fortunate to use some of the KOA data, the New York State data. It's wonderful that that's made available for all of us. We had a lot of statistics on how camping, supports mental health and improvement in families. And, RVing has a $2 billion economic impact here in New York. It's no small potatoes. So being able to take that data from an advocacy standpoint is extremely beneficial.
Yeah, definitely. I guess one of the things we're hearing a lot more is the winter camping. Is that something that you're seeing more of in New York? I know you're kind of on the northern tier there, especially when you get up to near Buffalo. They're always snowy up there. So I guess, are people more interested in winter camping in New York than maybe they used to be?
They are. It's not, the most popular thing. For the most part, our campgrounds here are in kind of an April or May to September, October season. But we are seeing a good contingency of parks that are staying open all year long. They may change their logistics. Maybe it doesn't have full water, or they cut power, or however that might work. But it's becoming extremely popular. We work with Ski New York. We have a lot of other associations that we're just trying to enhance that outdoor hospitality experience. The Eclipse here in New York, I am waiting to see the data on the economic impact of the Eclipse here. But we had parks that opened early, that promoted that they were opening early because it was just going to be that worth it. So we were fortunate there this year.
Yeah, some of the initial data that we saw that people gave us from places like Northgate Resorts and Great Escapes RV, and those places, just amazing. I think Northgate saw like 200% increase in business or whatever with its parks with the Eclipse. So it's going to be amazing to see the national impact that Eclipse had when that data finally all gets compiled.
It really is. And I love that camping was able to be a part of that, and we provided a resource for people to experience something they may not have otherwise been able to. So,
yep. Well, thanks, Emily, for coming on. I mean, we got to wrap up here, but I guess, how do people get in touch with you or with CONY to learn more about the association?
Absolutely. Well, I really appreciate the time here. It's been such a pleasure speaking with both of you. We're at campnewyork.com. My email directly is emily@campnewyork.com, all spelled out, very simple. I'm certainly happy to be a resource to members, to non-members, to suppliers. This industry, much like many, is about relationships, and it's working together. And I really am so grateful for the people that have been willing to support us in the transition, including my predecessor, our board of directors. So anybody that would love to reach out, I would love to learn from you. Let's get together. Let's chat.
Yeah. Well, thank you again, Emily, for coming on. And thanks, everyone, for watching. And hopefully, wherever you're at, the weather's getting nicer for summer. So
enjoy. Good luck, everybody.
Yeah. Have a great week, everyone. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you for listening to WCM's Park Update, a production of Woodall's Campground Magazine. Join us for a new show each Tuesday at 3 p.m. Eastern on Facebook, YouTube, and wherever you listen to podcasts. Follow us on Facebook and LinkedIn for daily news and updates, and subscribe to our news feed on our website at woodallscm.com.